Um, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you may be in the world today. My name is Christian, and I'm joined today by my colleague Carbon and an amazing panel of guest speakers. Welcome to the second installment of our webinar series on a sustainable private sector. So today we will discuss green and responsible business practices and investment. We are joined today by Joel Tomas from Grassroots Initiatives, Ara Cho from the Association for Supporting the SDGs for the UN, and Nguyen from Climate Bonds Initiative. So we hope with this webinar to provide information and inspiration, for the great work that's being done and advanced by our guest speakers. The private sector using traditional approaches that, often marginalize environmental and social externalities such as pollution, climate change, and inequality, have been a primary driver in many of the challenges that we face today. And these challenges are currently inhibiting, the possibility of sustained prosperity and environmental well-being in our futures, meaning thus that they are unsustainable. However, the private sector is also adaptive and very innovative and is, increasingly paving a path towards more sustainable consumption, production, and investment. So, with that being said, I would like to give a brief introduction to our first speaker. So if you can just give me a moment while I share my screen. So I would like to give a short introduction to our first speaker, Mr. Joel Tomas from Grassroots Initiatives. He is the operations and training consultant. So with over 25 years of experience in the hospitality industry, Joel joined Grassroots in the spring of 2018 as an operations manager. His role includes expanding the company's operational development to meet more rigid sustainability practices and extending those same practices to other businesses in the industry. He is currently completing a bachelor's in health science, majoring in public health and global sustainability from Western Sydney University. So with that being said, I'd like to then now pass it off to Joel for his presentation. So I'm going to transfer you the role of host, and you should be able to share your screen for your presentation.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Have you just let me know when you've transferred?
Okay, should be transferring. Let me know if it's working.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just double check. Can you guys see? You can't see my screen, can you?
Okay. Not yet.
Okay, one participant.
So if you should be able to go down to the bottom, and there should be a green button that says share screen.
Yep. I'm on that, but nothing says portion of a screen. No. I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem. Take your time.
Hang on, just give me one moment. Yeah, I'm fine. Sorry, I'm just working it out now. So
no worries.
Presentations down here. I don't know what all this is.
Um,
Yeah. Have you got that?
it's not getting the screen. Yeah, I can see your screen. If can you start the presentation, or is it working?
Yes. Yeah, it'll got it now. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about
awesome.
that. So firstly, sorry about that. And thank you for Christian for inviting me onto the talk. So like he said, I've got 25 years experience, mainly in front of house operations within the hospitality industry. So I'll be talking from a food and hospitality perspective in ways that we implemented responsible business practices into the restaurant that we had and into our operations and business culture, and how these helped influence customer choices and how you can too in whatever business you're in. So my wife, Peggy Chan, founded Grassroots Pantry in 2012 in Hong Kong. And she's also a passionate plant-based and environmental activist. So she opened the restaurant to help to serve plant-based food, as well as to raise awareness on the food system. It was used as a cafe and workshop space where she would do plant-based cooking classes, documentary screenings, and get farmers in to teach the community about organic farming. So rather than preach, we chose to teach those who wanted to learn. Unfortunately, we closed the restaurant at the end of last year, and we've now transitioned to do hospitality consulting, where we help businesses transition to more plant forward and sustainable business operations. And we're also hoping to launch a new initiative in Q1 in 2021. So if I don't have many social media followers, so if people want to follow, they can keep up to date with what we're doing. So we use the restaurant as a platform to test the restaurant system, conduct trial and error, and push boundaries to what we wanted to achieve. Because plant-based cooking back in 2012 wasn't really well known here in Hong Kong, and it took a long time for Peggy to bring it to the fore. And now plant-based is sort of the norm in most places, and especially with the pandemic. So the first place we start is through our menus and through our marketing. So the menu, one of the main parts is the design and the layout, and then basically like the information that we put in there, and then the end product, which is the most important. So what we tried to do here was tell stories through food. So the first image on the left, the nice colorful one, is an image from a school lunch program that we're currently working on, where we're trying to help the caterer introduce more plant-based and more healthier options for the students. So this is, I think there's about 2,500 students at the school. It's an international school here in Hong Kong. And the parents were the ones driving this, that they wanted their kids to have more options, not just sort of, the regular school cafeteria options. So this poster here will be put up throughout the school and also through the cafeteria. So it's showing the many different vegetables that can be used on the plate, rather than it being a side dish. So that's what we're trying to do with this school lunch program. It's to make plant-based dishes more appealing for the students and the staff at the school. And then the other two are from an excerpt from our a la carte menu. So this is what you get when you come into the restaurant. So the first page talks about the ethos and values of Grassroots, what Peggy was essentially trying to set out to achieve when she opened the restaurant. So it gives context and background, and then each menu was hand drawn by her. So that give the guests an indication as to what the dish would look like. So for ingredients such as teff, which is a not well-known ingredient, at the back of the menu, we also had like a glossary. So whilst eating, they could also become informed as to what some of the ingredients that we're using. And then a spicy tomato tuna hand roll. This was one of our best sellers. So obviously being a plant-based restaurant, people would, like this was 2018, I think, this menu. So this is when Impossible and Beyond were becoming, well-known within the food sector. But Peggy always used to challenge herself and the chefs to try to come up with some different ideas. So this was a spicy tomato tuna hand roll. So this gives, even though it's obviously not tuna, it's saying that tomato is going to mimic the tuna so that people know exactly what they're going to get. So the World Resource Institute has a great resource that I think can be used across multiple sectors, that it's basically using to guide diners towards plant-rich diets, and they use the 5 Ps. So the 5 Ps are product, placement, presentation, and promotion. So this can be used across multiple sectors, whether you're selling shoes, clothes, or whatever. So the product in our case is obviously plant-based food. The placement, you know, where how we lay out our menu, the placement of the posters within the school, the presentation. So using colorful, you know, marketing tools to try to catch people's attention, and then they start reading about it. Also the way that, you know, we present the menu so that then people are going through it to actually learn whilst they're eating. Promotion, and then obviously people, like within hospitality, it's so important that you get the right people, but then also people who are motivated and then who can pass on this message to your guests and stakeholders. So another way we also did this was through holding special event dinners. So we did an annual Earth Hour event where we looked to engage not only regular diners, but also others outside due to it being a special event. So this one in 2019, which turned out to be our last one, Peggy developed a 12-course menu inspired by Project Drawdown, which is where each course highlights one solution our industry and each individual can make to help combat climate change. So there was a story behind every dish. So food has, I think, 15 of the top 20 ways to combat climate change. So we decided to use that as a tool to, you know, explain the story behind the dish. So also in restaurants, we're one of the rare industries in the world where the consumer and the creator are both present at the point of consumption. There's not many others in the world that can say that, right? So you could sell insurance, but then, you know, where are you selling that to? Who are you selling that to? It's over the phone. So both people are present that have created that dish. So being able to connect and tell that story is a vital part of hospitality and what we're able to do. Another way was to challenge other chefs within the APAC region. So the idea of this pop-up challenge was to challenge our peers and chefs across the APAC region to open their senses and think about cooking more plant-based, and hopefully then use these skills back in their own restaurants. So we've got some 2 Michelin-starred chefs here. We've got two of Asia's female best chefs that we challenged to this, and they were able to, you know, as much as Peggy was able to learn from them and our staff, they were also able to take away a lot from this as well. She also cooked at the James Beard House for International Women's Day in 2018, where we used this initiative as well. So we find that restaurants are a fantastic platform to drive change and innovation, and the food system has a massive potential to, you know, to create huge impact. You know, chefs are seen as the new rock stars, and, you know, are agents of change. So we feel as though that the food industry can have a massive impact on, you know, sustainability across multiple sectors. So now we get into the fun stuff. So this here looks at the whole food system and the costs associated with it. As with all businesses, there are external costs that are not factored into the end selling cost. So this is quite a new theory that has come to fruition. And again, it goes across multiple sectors. So true cost accounting is defined as a critical tool to help us as a global community better understand the impacts of food systems, address the most harmful practices, and find new positive pathways forward. By evaluating both the positive and negative impacts inherent in different food systems and making these impacts transparent, decision makers on farms and in governments, institutions and businesses can make better informed decisions that consider the economic, environmental and social impact of their choices. So this takes into, like it says, it takes into account the economic, social and environmental. So very much in line with what, you know, with what Christian wanted with this talk. Food plays such a major part, especially in, you know, every culture's got their own defined cuisine. You know, everyone that's traveled has, you know, will go back to their home city and go, this isn't Italian food, this isn't Indian food, this isn't what I had. It's inherent to that, you know, to that country or that city. So the concept of true cost accounting emerged from the increased awareness of the negative externalities of large scale industrial food production and the system that allows for enormous profit from these transnational businesses, while farmers, communities and ecosystems suffer from the negative consequences from this form of production. So here it's a mechanism to inform policies and programs aimed at positive change. So again, it's a multi-stakeholder systems approach to measure the costs and benefits of different agricultural production systems. So in ideal circumstances, evidence from this is put into practice to educate key food stakeholders such as policymakers, farmers and consumers to work toward a more resilient and regenerative food system that supports public health, communities and ecosystems. So these environmental and human health costs are not reflected in the price that we pay for some of these foods. So the KPMG report found that the food industry is one of the most environmentally damaging industries, and that if all external prices were internalized, they would equate to at least over 200% of the industry's revenue. So often that the food items that are lowest in price come at the highest cost to human health and the environment. So as mentioned in the first point there, the price at checkout deflects the hidden costs that we eventually pay for over time and that are passed down to future generations. There is a supermarket in Germany that has two prices up on their shelves when you're shopping. It's got the actual cost, what you will pay at the counter, and then the true cost. So it might not work the first time that a person's inside the supermarket, but hopefully it starts to get people to think about the true cost of food and all the external costs that are associated with food. So it's not just the cost of the food, it's what it's doing to us on a human and environmental health perspective. So there's over 2 billion people undernourished and over 2 billion people overnourished in the world. So with the overnourished have diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and that's a huge, this is a huge problem and we seriously need to re-engineer the food system. In China, where I'm currently based, I'm based in Hong Kong, in about 10 to 15 years, they're expecting about 30% of the population to have diabetes. So that will equate to the whole population of America. So imagine that impact on their healthcare system in the coming years. So farmers who grow our food, those picking and harvesting the food, as well as those working in food processing facilities are generally from the lowest socioeconomic areas, and they do not have the means or capacity to speak out. Farmers are often working for larger corporations and do not have a say in the workings of their farms and ranches. So they keep quiet about this, and then those external costs keep the money that they make is generally reduced. So here, COVID's obviously stopped the world. We could be doing this in person, and the pathogenic, contamination and the disease has supposedly originated in the Wuhan wet markets, in the live animal markets. But us in Western countries, I know my family, that we're so disconnected from Wuhan that we don't actually realize, the effect that has, whether we are eating something from the live animal market or just in general. One of my favorite sayings that I found when I was about 18 was, if I view the world the same at 50 as I did at 20, I've wasted 30 years of my life. So it means that we need to keep evolving. We need to keep thinking. The way that we did business 10 years ago is not the way we do business today. And I think it's true for the pandemic as well. If we continue working the same way as we did in 2018 and 2019, next year and in the coming years, we're in for a rude shock. So, China's gone through swine flu, bird flu, mad cow disease, all since, in the last 20 to 30 years. There's still a massive appetite for meat here, but the new science is telling us that we actually need to be eating more plants and legumes and grains. So in 2018, we produced we conducted a full life cycle analysis, I should say, at the restaurant. And then this is where I was introduced to Christian. He actually came into the restaurant, I think in 2018, and was having some lunch and saw our sustainability report on the table. And from there, we got talking, and he actually took the sustainability report away with him, and we kept in touch, and we actually got recognized by the UN SDG help desk as a best practice restaurant. So showing what a small restaurant in Hong Kong, where it's the highest density of restaurants in the world, one of the most competitive markets in the world to have a restaurant in terms of rents, that if we can do something about it, why can't others out there? And again, that was one of the reasons to challenge the chefs in the TCTs was to challenge them to start thinking that way. So part of the results that we got out of this was that a small plant-based restaurant in Hong Kong compared to some restaurants in Denmark emitted 2/3 less greenhouse gas emissions just by sourcing the products that we did and not serving animal products. So we're talking some restaurants here in Denmark that source their meat, direct from the farm. Farms could be 1 kilometre or 2 down the road, but still the greenhouse gas emissions that they emitted per diner was 2/3 more than what we did. And it was a way for us to communicate our findings to our stakeholders and to our customers, and which hopefully helped them feel better about choosing to eat with us, but also not only feeling satisfied in their stomachs, but also mentally, right? So, within their soul, by knowing that they are contributing, or by choosing to dine with us, they're actually doing something good for the environment as well. So, like I said, that happenstance happened. Christian came in, and we were recognized, and here I am talking on a panel today for him, so which I'm truly grateful for. So again, upon further communication with Christian, without even recognizing or trying, we actually were linked to 14 of the 17 SDGs. So this was a business model that, like I said, Peggy had from 2012, and that we kept working at over that time. So it wasn't anything that we set in our business model was to reach or to work towards the SDGs. It was just something that happened within our restaurant. And since we've started the consulting, we're implementing that into a lot of the businesses that we are working with, and operators are now seeing the value of aligning with the SDGs and knowing that that's going to be the new normal going forward. So that's been a really big one for us. And like I said, a small restaurant in such a big place like Hong Kong to have this amount of impact and to go through all of this, it now shows that it can be done, and that there shouldn't be any more excuses for restaurateurs and operators. So like I said, our 8-year survival in such a competitive market is testament to show that a socially conscious food business can also be equally productive and reputable, especially in a changing market. So this here was an article I found this week from Jose Andres, who's a world-renowned chef who started the World Central Kitchen on the back of an earthquake in Haiti in 2010. So basically, he set up a mobile kitchen that would go and would help to feed people that have been displaced and obviously gone through the trauma of the earthquake. So he mobilized his chef and wider community to help those in need, and continues to do so to this day. He uses his voice to speak out, which is aligned with SDG 17. And he's like he's a person that we look up to because of what he does and how he does it. So taken from the article, he went to Central California, and during the middle of the pandemic, and his team was preparing meals for the United Farm Workers who pick America's crops. And one of the workers is quoted as saying, "We work so hard so that the people can get food on their table, and yet we are the ones who do not have food ourselves." So she picks blueberries and table grapes. So it goes to show that the most food insecure people in the world are often the ones that are there on the ground picking all the food and producing all the food for us, that we can just walk into a supermarket or go to a wet market and just pick up the food. So, and this is a beautiful quote, again, straight from the article. "Food is the fastest way to rebuild our sense of community. We can put people back to work preparing it, and we can put our lives back together by fighting hunger. We need to hope for a better world in 2021, and there's nothing more hopeful than the thought of sharing our food and feeding a nation. By sourcing direct from farms, forming relationships with farmers, and helping to take excess or imperfect food from them will all help farmers make a living wage." So from that, what I've ascertained is that you know, imperfect fruits and vegetables that we all, when we go to a supermarket, we pick straight past. We need to start buying that to ensure that farmers are going to get paid, and they just contain the same amount of nutrients as what the, you know, the perfect one looks like as well. So I'm going to leave you with this. So eating is an agricultural and political act. So we need to see our food system as truly a system and evaluating the positive and negative externalities. So it can't just be up to the academics, the CEOs that hold this information. It needs to filter down. It's like any business. The more we're siloed, the less that's going to get done. So we've been to numerous conferences around the world where we're basically the only people who are frontline hospitality workers. It's always, you know, the sustainability people, which is great, but then how do we turn this into actionable and practical ways that everyone can, you know, everyone within the hospitality sector can action. So, you know, the sector employs nearly 1 in 2 people around the world. I think it's about, depends where you get your data from. It's between sort of 41 to 47% of the world are employed directly in the food system. So we need to include everybody in that, and it's not a blanket solution, because what works in America or Canada, you know, London, England, everywhere is not going to work for us here in Hong Kong. It's not going to work for people in China. It's not going to work in Vietnam, because we import 97% of our food here in Hong Kong. So we're not a food secure nation or a city. So we need to have regional and country solutions. So I'll leave you with this thought. So for those of us lucky enough to eat 3 times a day, we need to use our purchasing power for the good, as this could help alleviate the issues we have within our food system. We simply can't go back to business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joel, for that absolutely excellent presentation. I think you touched upon a lot of you know, very interesting and important points. And I really like your philosophy of, you know, teaching, not preaching, and how you use stories to reach out to people, and also like the importance of informing the customer and grabbing their attention in the way you operate. And also like highlighting the impact of the food systems and how food systems really do cut across so many different sectors, and also just our lives in so many ways that people often take for granted. And then when you especially look at like the food insecurity that you mentioned, that the people producing this food that some of us are fortunate enough to take for granted are experiencing, you know, it's a very important point. And, you know, this true cost accounting you brought up, it's absolutely fascinating and very forward thinking, which, you know, and you know, speaking of forward thinking, I really liked this correlation you drew between the pandemic, how it's changing our mindset of what is business as usual. And, you know, and it kind of brings us to the reality that business as usual going forward is going to be very different. It has to be very different. And, you know, the new normal, as you said, like, is often becoming aligned with the SDGs. And it's really awesome to see like how your business was impacting so many of these SDGs, even if it was unintentional.
Yeah.
And, you know, your last point about local solutions, about how solutions have to be, you know, based on the context of the location. I think that's also, you know, a really important point to take home, especially for people trying to, you know, make impact across different countries or in this, you know, international context we live in. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. And so it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. So last but definitely not least is Miss Quyhn Nguyen. So Quyhn has been managing research and capacity building activities on green finance in the ASEAN region in her monitoring role with the Climate Bonds Initiative team and their partner institutions. So for instance, you know, she works on developing working papers, monitoring budget planning, organizing capacity building events, and gathering inputs and evaluating and reviewing their project activities. So prior to working with Climate Bonds Initiative, Quyhn spent over 1 year as an economics affairs consultant with the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific in Bangkok, Thailand. And in this capacity, she supported teams in projects, procurement, working papers, and training activities for the United Nations SCAP's Climate Finance Project. She also has served as a lecturer in the Vietnam National University of Ho Chi Minh City and as an assistant professor at, apologies if I get this name wrong, at Ritsumeikan University in Japan. You can correct me if I'm wrong, because I know I'm wrong.
Definitely right.
Oh, really? I'm surprised. Additionally, she is a PhD candidate in international relations at Ritsumeikan University in Japan and has published several papers regarding foreign direct investment issues in Asia. So without further ado, I will transfer you. Well, I'll put up your presentation. I have your presentation at hand. Just give me 1 second. Okay. All right. I'll pass it off to you now, Quyhn.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to join such an interesting webinar today, and give me the floor to share what I'm doing right now for the Green Finance in the region, ASEAN. My name is Quyhn, and now I'm working for Climate Bond Initiative, NGO from UK, working on the green finance globally. But I'm in charge of the ASEAN program, raise awareness about green finance in Southeast Asia. Could you please turn to the next slide? Thank you so much. So Climate Bond Initiative working especially on green finance and green bonds, climate bonds. So just want to share some very basic information about what we're doing right now. First is about green bond and what is different between green bond and climate bonds and regular bonds. So at first, let's talk about bonds. So what is a bonds? Actually, bond is a loan which is issued from the government. It can be from the corporate company, and it can regard as a debt, and the issuer, which I mentioned about, which is the government and corporate, is the holder of the debt. And depend on the agreement, and then the debt can be paid in the certain amount of time and the certain amount of interest. That also the regular bond. So what is different between the regular bond and green bonds? Regular bonds and the people can be company, can be individual buy the bond, which they can exchange the money later and invest to the economic activity. For the green bond, we only focus on environmental related project, or they say green project. So on the bond will invest to the green business or green project. So what is different between green bonds and climate bonds? So green bond can be related to environmental or social responsibility, sustainable bond, social bond. But climate bond only invests to the project which is focused on climate change business. So that actually not much different. It's just like the purpose of the bonds. Recently, green bond have several standards to issue the bond and also to see what the process of the bond. The standard of the green bond right now can be mentioned about ICMA, International Capital Market Association, used globally, and also Climate Bond Initiative also have their own green bond standard, and several regional around the world also have their own standard. For example, ASEAN region have ACMF, ASEAN Capital Market Forum, also release a framework on how to issue the green bond, and we can count it as a green bond standard. Talking about green project, green business. So what is actually can we call green? So like social norm is that green is something related to environment. Specifically, we can mention several green projects that green bond right now issue on, which is about energy, let's say solar power, let's say water or ocean power, renewable energy, let's say green building, let's say green transportation, water, waste management, land use, industry, information communication technology. That is the 8 project that is a climate bond initiative is focused right now to certify this is a green project or not. Can you turn to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So who issue the bonds and who invest the bond or who buy the bonds? So who issue the bond, who issue the regular bond also can issue the green bond. So who issue the regular bond that I already mentioned, that is the government, can be the corporate, industrial or corporate, and can be the bank. So that's all of the factor that can issue the bonds. And who invests the bond? Individual can buy the bonds, but usually corporate will buy the bond or government will buy the bonds. And but in Netherlands and South Africa, individually can buy the bond. So individually buy the bond is not really a common thing right now, but hopefully in the future, and then the green bond can get more closer to our individual choice.
You need to next slide.
Next slide, please. So before I get to the status of a green bond in ASEAN, maybe I would like to mention about why we have to buy a green bond and why we have to invest in green bond. Bond is like a debt, and when you invest, let's say the tool of finance, you can choose the regular bonds or you can choose the green bond. But Aracho and also Joe already straight on like how important is it of sustainable development, so we can understand like how much personal choice can influence to sustainable development and also to the social responsibility wisely. So that is the benefit of the green bond. And also talk about the ESG. Aracho also mentioned about environment, social, government responsibility, ESG. The green bond is less risk than other bonds. It's gonna take a longer term. The interest may be the same with regular bonds, but it's for sustainable development. How the people in ASEAN and how the government in ASEAN or corporate in ASEAN, business ASEAN care about the green bond. So let's see at the first figure right now. This is the status of the global green bond, and we can see different regions in the world have different responsibility on green bond or different interests in the green bond. Globally, the green bond already increased from 107 billion US dollar from 2018 to 259 billion US dollar in 2019. Especially in the ASEAN region, 2018, ASEAN issued $4 billion green bond, but in 2019, ASEAN region issued to 8 billion US dollar on green bonds. So it's double between 2019 and 2018. And also dominant 3% for the global total and 12% in Asia and Pacific region. So we can see on the interest of the green bond increasing now. But with the population of ASEAN around 600 total 600 million, and we can estimate the GDP of ASEAN is $3 trillion US. So green bond issue is increasing usually in the green infrastructure and more about climate resilient economics. The first green bond in ASEAN was released in 2016 by AP Renewable Energy Industry in the Philippines. And after the Philippines, Singapore and Thailand also issued the green bond. In Thailand, the first green bond was released in 2018 by Thai Military Bank. And also the BTS, the Skytrain of Thailand, also issued the green bond in 2018 and 2019. How about other countries in ASEAN? For example, Indonesia. Indonesia very prioritize green bond and green sukuk, and it's mentioned about on the national policy and also the national regulation. Indonesian government initiative take the leadership for the green sukuk in 2018 and 2019. Singapore and released a lot of green bond over 2018 and 2019. Can you please turn to the next slide? So from the second figure, you can see the status of green bond in Thailand. Singapore dominant 50% of the total green bond in ASEAN countries, and following with Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam also issued 2 green bonds in 2018, but it's not come from the corporate, but come from the government, a local government of Vũng Tàu, and also local government of Ho Chi Minh City issued 2 green bonds. And Malaysia continued to issue green bond in 2019, and invest into green sukuk transaction. So what is I talk about green sukuk. So actually green sukuk and green bond is same, but green sukuk they follow the principle of Sharia law and also ethical standard, which is prioritized in Islamic bank when happening in Indonesia and Malaysia. Other countries in ASEAN region like Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia have yet issued a green bond. But I can see the trend in the ASEAN region right now is that they have an Asian ASEAN Capital Market Forum that have the framework on green bond. So it means the framework and standard can apply for every country in Southeast Asia. And actually, the challenge in ASEAN region is that every country have different scale economic. But once ASEAN have a framework on green bond, and then ASEAN can have the standard to follow for the green finance, specifically on green bond. In 2019, ASEAN have 35 green bond, and of course the lastest one is belong to Singapore. And what is the industry of green bond focus on? Could you please turn to the next slide, Christian? Mm-hmm. So here is the percentage of the industry with the green bond issue in mostly about energy for sure. At first, you know, Southeast Asia's country use a lot of coal products, so this is a good thing that on the traditional business move transition to the green business, and the first one that we can count here is that energy. Through the media in Vietnam recently, people talk about solar power all the time. People talk about wind power all the time. And the same thing with other countries in South Asia too. People start interest on solar power and reduce the coal product. Another sector was take 34% in green bond ASEAN is that green building. Green building also have dominating in Singapore and Philippines and Thailand, Indonesia and Malaysia. And other percentages belong to water, transport, waste management, land use, and other industry. So what is the role of climate bond initiative in terms of raising the awareness, raising capacity building in ASEAN region? So climate bond initiative is the NGO, and our work more about focus on capacity building. We have training, we have workshop, which is provides knowledge on green finance, and also we provide the certification for the green business. So, for example, to issue a green bond, and we have two steps to issue a green bond. The first one is that repair the bond. So which factor want to issue a green bond? Let's say a corporate want to issue a green bond, right? So we have to repair all the information and see the green bond framework that the business fit into the criteria of the green bond framework or not. And then they engage to the verifier. The verifier gonna see, is it a green project or not? Is it a green business, and give the engage to the arm of the approval process to approve the green project. And then they get the certified to issue a green bond, and this is the climate bond initiative can have, that they come with climate bond standard or with International Capital Market Association standard. CBI will see this project is eligible to issue a green bond. And then the business needs to see the market. If the market interesting into this green business, and is it matched with the policy, with the regulation, and then to issue it, and then have to report annually. So another thing which is very important to be a difference between regular bond and green bond is that the green bond have to report annually, and the green bond are considered as the most transparency bonds compared with other bonds, because need to report with on the standard of the green bond framework. Here's some information about green bond from climate bond initiative, and maybe my presentation finished by now, and we can continue in the discussion.
Okay. Thank you so much, Quyhn. I very much enjoyed this presentation. It was very, very educational. I certainly learned a lot about climate bonds that I didn't know before, so thank you. I really like the point you say that climate bonds, they're not much different from a normal bond except for the purpose, and that, you know, it's for green projects or green businesses, or you know, and countries that have green investments. But it is just that the purpose that makes all the difference. So while it's not very different in from a normal bond, it's that purpose that makes all the difference. And we're seeing today a lot more responsible investment, and it's also very encouraging to see these figures that you presented showing this huge increase in green bond issuance. And I think this is, a great way to provide incentive, for corporations, to go green. And this framework that CBI has was also very interesting in that, it really sounds like it ensures that the recipients, business is in fact actually, green, and that their projects are actually green. And this idea that you mentioned of transparency, I think is, very important for businesses going forward in the 21st century. Transparency is not just important for, sustainable development at large, but I mean, it's important for businesses to be competitive against one another going forward, where transparency is going to be more of an issue for consumers. So I, very much enjoyed all these points you made, and hearing about the green bonds situation in ASEAN. So thank you very much. And I think now we'll move on to a short Q&A. So I think some people have already left a few questions in the chat box, but if you have not and you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat box and we shall answer them. So I'll pass it off now to Carbon.
Hi, everyone. So first, thank you all for your fantastic presentation. We got audience who are super interested in your topics you presented and found it educational. So first, we got a question. The question is, how effective is the Green New Deal implementation so far in your perspective?
Oh, is that a question for me?
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you. I think, in my opinion, the Green New Deal is a policy that's based on green technology. So technology like burning carbon into like depleted gas and oil sources, or like warehouse systems based on big data, eco-friendly technology in general, like electric vehicles and such. I think those kind of energy efficient technologies are basically what the Green New Deal is based on. And this technology at the moment, I think, is available in more developed nations, but not so much in developed countries, like developing countries, especially with the pandemic. Carbon reduction is not exactly like a priority to these nations. So in the case of Korea, it just recently started executing the Green New Deal and implementing that policy. And because it's still taking its very first steps, I think it's a little too early to say how well it's been executed, but I like to say that I have a very positive outlook on it.
Great, thank you for the response. We got another question for Joe. So your business is super impressive and innovative, and we really look forward that more customers could start thinking about shifting a diet with more vegetables and less meat, which is both healthy and environmental friendly. So could you share your observation of the trends you have been witnessing these years in terms of shift of people's diet preference? Is plant-based dishes being increasingly accepted by customers in Hong Kong?
I think overall what the pandemic has shown is, like, food insecurity and people's concerns about where their food comes from. In Hong Kong, the sales of plant-based alternative meats, so things such as Beyond, Impossible, and a Hong Kong grown company, Omnipork, I think increased, tenfold. So the interest is there. And at the moment, the interest is in those plant-based alternatives. People aren't necessarily ready to make that full shift sometimes, and they still want that texture of meats. It might take a little while longer. Like, I think it's a great bridge, but I think the more that we can eat whole food, plant-based diets, it will be better, even if it's only 1 or 2 days a week, because we know everybody's not going to shift. But I'm quite optimistic that that here and everywhere that the shift will happen, but it's not going to be a 100% shift. It will be, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, those sorts of things, and people will be more conscious of what they're eating.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with your perspective, and that's all from my end. Christian, would you like to take over and continue the discussion?
Thank you, Carbon. So I assume that there's no further questions in the chat box.
Yeah, right.
Okay. In that case, I think I'll just leave it for the speakers. If anyone would like to make any final points, please let us know.
No, I just want to say thank you. I think, hearing it from different perspectives as to what's, I've heard of green bonds, but I will be hammering Quyhn with quite a few more questions afterwards about it. And obviously the work that's going on in Korea, right? I mean, Korea, Japan, and those places aren't really known to be, moving towards this kind of, towards more green options, but it's great to hear that it is happening over there. We've all got to start somewhere, and I hope that everybody out there, that listens and will listen to this does take something out of it, but just keep in mind that it constantly evolves. Like, it's not what we did 8 years ago is now becoming normal practice today, right? So it's gonna take time for people to, to catch up and to reach there. It'd be great if we could click our fingers and it happened, yesterday, but it's, that's not the case. So it's just small steps, small incremental steps will get us there. So yeah, thank you once again for having us. It's been great.
Yeah, the pleasure is all ours, and I think the audience has a lot to take away from this webinar. You have all made a bunch of fantastic points, and I think it's been a very inspiring session. And I'd like to thank everyone that tuned in as well to listen today, for taking the time out of your day to hear from us, and as well to Carbon for helping organize this webinar, and again just to the panel for providing your knowledge, your experience, and your insight. And we hope to be inviting you to the next installment of the webinar series. And so thank you again to everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon and evening and morning. And so
you go and get some sleep.
Thank you very much, everyone. See ya.
Bye.